Tonight, global crisis, new attacks in the war in Ukraine. The latest after an explosion on the Herschel Bridge connecting Russia to annexed territory of Crimea. This as protests in Iran intensify, the worldwide tensions amid dangerous new missile launches from North Korea.
Plus, the great realignment.
Real rank and file Democrats on the ground, they're leaving their party in droves.
Republicans and Democrats are banking on a different type of voter in upcoming midterms. All this and more on Faith Nation.
Rising threats across the globe with the Ukraine war at the forefront. Welcome to Faith Nation. From our studio in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
And I'm Abigail Robertson.
Absolute evil. That's what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling a barrage of Russian missile attacks over the last 24 hours that have seemingly targeted civilians.
At least 17 people are reported dead across multiple cities. The strikes follow a weekend explosion crippling a strategic Russian bridge.
National security correspondent Caitlin Burke joins us now with more. Caitlin, these two escalations come at a dangerous time with a nuclear threat already hanging over the conflict.
That's right. The stakes are definitely high. Right now, the White House says that while there's no new intelligence indicating Russia is planning imminent use of nuclear weapons, these recent attacks show Putin is growing more impulsive and reckless.
The sounds of retaliation. Missiles striking up to 16 Ukrainian cities only hours after Russia blamed the country's military for blowing up a critical bridge to the Crimean Peninsula. Putin calling the attack a terrorist action.
That bridge is a symbol of Putin's power. It's a symbol of his ability to get things done. And so striking that bridge, especially just the day after his birthday, is a specific attack on Vladimir Putin.
The response was immediate, with Putin ordering a series of long-range missile attacks. CBN News contributor Chuck Holton, who recently spent 4 months living in Ukraine, points out that while strikes over the last 24 hours have been extensive, they could end up being a waste of millions of dollars in missiles, hitting only civilian targets.
They brought out some of their last remaining missiles that are precision-guided munitions. They've basically run out of those, and they were saving just what few they had left for something really important. And this is what they deemed to be really important.
President Zelensky says Russia wants to wipe Ukraine off the face of the earth and continued to urge world leaders to designate Russia as a terrorist state.
They struck a pedestrian bridge that's a big tourist attraction. They struck the Shevchenko Park, Taras Shevchenko Park, right in front of the university. And they did it at rush hour, where there would be lots and lots of people in there. These targets on Kyiv especially were specifically targeting civilian areas, areas where civilians congregate. That is terrorism.
National condemnation of the missile strikes is growing. A European Union spokesman saying he believes this attack on Ukrainian civilians amounts to a war crime. The UN Secretary General calling the strikes another unacceptable escalation of the war, and the White House strongly denouncing Putin's brutality while vowing to continue supporting Ukraine. Abigail, Matt?
Thanks, Caitlin. Well, here with us now for more on this is Bradley Bowman, Senior Director at FDD's Center on Military and Political Power. Bradley, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Faith Nation. And I just want to start by asking you, Russia's latest barrage of missile attacks comes amid growing fears Putin might use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And President Biden recently warned that the risk of nuclear Armageddon is the highest it's been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Is that an overstatement or pretty on the mark?
Thank you for the opportunity to join you, and thank you for the question. You know, as I look at these issues, I would say that we're in more of a moment of nuclear danger than we've seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I think that assessment is more or less correct. But, you know, it's difficult to state these things honestly with absolute certainty, because what we're really talking about is the decision-making of and psychology of one man, Vladimir Putin. And as Secretary Austin, our Secretary of Defense, has said, there's not a lot of individuals and checks and balances, if you will, standing between Vladimir Putin and the use of some sort of nuclear weapon. I think his use of nuclear weapons against the United States proper or against any NATO member country is very unlikely, because they understand that that would be a suicide pact. But the use of a smaller or tactical or non-strategic nuclear weapon in Ukraine could be possible. I think if the United States were to back down in the face of that, that would set a horrible precedent on the European continent. And I also fear that the lessons Beijing might draw from that as well.
Now, Russia might not be the only reason to be concerned about seeing a nuclear weapon strike. North Korea confirming that a recent barrage of 7 missile launches, including 2 on Sunday, were the simulated use of tactical battlefield nukes, training to possibly wipe out a U.S. or a South Korean target. Pyongyang is upset over recent U.S. and South Korean live-fire exercises in the region. Now, you just mentioned that you don't think it's very likely we'd be in an Armageddon situation, but I mean, how dire is this situation in North Korea and their tactical nuclear operations?
You know, I think it's important that, that we're talking about both, because as Americans, sometimes we think of these issues in neat little compartmentalized boxes, and we think, what happens in Ukraine stays in Ukraine, if you will. But as I hinted there at the tail end of my last response, our adversaries and allies and everyone in between around the world are watching how we respond, and they're changing their behaviors, perceptions, and actions accordingly. Big surprise, right? That Kim Jong-un is now talking about tactical nuclear weapons, because he sees the concern that is imposing in Europe and the United States. And so they've long had nuclear weapons. They've had this barrage of ballistic missile tests. They're talking about pushing weapons down to tactical army units and potentially employing them in a preemptive way. This is all designed to build his domestic prestige and to coerce and intimidate the United States and our allies in South Korea. And I think at this moment for the United States and our allies, our greatest danger is not strength, but weakness.
And Bradley, I want to ask you about a third nuclear threat to the globe worldwide. We have about a minute left, but there's worldwide outrage that's mounting over the crackdown of anti-government protesters in Iran. At least 185 people have been killed over the past few weeks, 19 of them children. And the Iranian people's rage, it started about 4 weeks ago over the death of the 22-year-old woman who died in police custody over the way she wore her hijab. So could we see the fall of the Iran regime from these protests and from this outrage in the country?
It's possible. Frankly, I hope so, because I see the regime in Tehran is one that specializes in oppressing the Iranian people and exporting terrorism. I mean, that's what they do best. And meanwhile, they're inching toward a nuclear weapons capability and deepening ties as they do that with Moscow and Beijing. So for these reasons, I believe that supporting the Iranian people advances our democratic principles and also serves U.S. interests. But as a last comment, let's keep in mind what unites Moscow and Tehran and Pyongyang and Beijing. These are authoritarian, autocratic regimes that are more interested in maintaining their power than serving their people. And that's what unites them and their opposition to the United States and our allies. And I think we need to keep that in mind as we look at each one of these threats and not over-compartmentalize, as I said earlier.
FDD's Bradley Bowman. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you.
Well, as we look at the crises across the world, Israeli police are searching for a terrorist who shot and killed a female border police officer this weekend. The attack took place at a checkpoint in the Jerusalem neighborhood of Shuafat Saturday night. This video shows the terrorist walking up to a group of soldiers and firing at point-blank range. The shooting coming hours after 2 Palestinian teenagers died in an Israeli military raid in Judea and Samaria.
Well, back home here in America, residents in Southwest Florida continue to assess the damage and pick up the pieces after Hurricane Ian. With whole neighborhoods washed away and more than 100 dead, the emotional toll is starting to have an impact. The Associated Press reports 2 men in their 70s took their own lives after seeing their losses. The state of Florida is setting up support centers to help victims deal with psychological and emotional trauma. FEMA has a 24-hour hotline to provide counseling and crisis support.
And CBN's Operation Blessing continues to help victims in the hurricane's aftermath. The ministry has delivered more than 460,000 pounds of relief to churches and ministries in Fort Myers, Naples, and other hard-hit areas. In Port Charlotte, a team from the ministry, CRISES for All Nations, volunteered with Operation Blessing to help clean up damaged homes and yards. One volunteer talked about the joy she found in helping others.
It's been amazing just to come out here, be the hands and the feet of Jesus, been able to go out here to pray with other people, to pray with the organization before we go out to different people's houses, and to really just do the work that Jesus would do. Because I think that if Jesus was here today, right now, he would be doing the same exact thing we are. That's putting the tarps on people's roofs, cleaning up their yards, doing whatever they need. Just see a need, meet a need.
They're doing great work out there. Well, coming up, as we head into the midterms, major voter bases are shifting in both the Republican and Democratic parties. We'll have a story on the Great Realignment coming up next. Some Republicans are rallying around Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker amid allegations he paid for a former girlfriend's abortion, as those allegations continue to swirl around his campaign. Walker denied paying for the procedure. A new report from the New York Times claims Walker asked the woman to have a second abortion, a claim Walker also denies. Florida Senator Rick Scott and Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton are set to campaign for Walker on Tuesday, hoping to boost his campaign following the stunning allegations. Walker's pro-life stance has been a central part of his campaign, and he'll debate Democratic opponent Senator Raphael Warnock on Friday.
Well, tonight, the GOP holds a substantial lead among the white working class, according to recent polls, while Democrats have a large lead among women with college degrees.
A reversal of trends approaching the midterm elections has both Republicans and Democrats banking on a different type of voter to support them at the polls. Chief political analyst David Brody has more on the Great Realignment.
In a country changed by COVID, growing inflation, and culture wars, it should come as no surprise that a great realignment is taking place in politics, too. The Democrat Party, long considered the party of the non-college educated working middle class in America, has seen the GOP taking its place.
The real rank and file Democrats on the ground, they're leaving their party in droves because they said, this is unrecognizable. I never signed up for this. I didn't want record high gas prices. I didn't want zero border. I wanted a country. I wanted, a shot at the American dream. That's what I wanted. And they see that that's not what it's been about at all.
The slide has been dramatic. More than 60 years ago, JFK won white voters without a degree by a 2-to-1 margin. In 2020, Joe Biden lost those same voters by a 2-to-1 margin, a total reversal. The latest poll ahead of the midterms shows the same trend. The GOP holds an overwhelming 61 to 29% lead among the white working class. Even so-called middle-class champions like Bernie Sanders sees the problem.
The truth is that the middle class of this country is falling further and further behind. Wages are not keeping up with inflation.
And Democrats are also starting to lose their grip on the reliable Hispanic vote. The latest NBC News Telemundo poll shows that even though Hispanics still prefer Democrats, 54% to 33%, that 21-point lead is lower than in the past. Take a look for yourselves. In election cycles over the last 10 years, the lead has dwindled from a whopping 42% a decade ago to today's 21 points. Given the drop, analysts point to Democrats taking the Hispanic vote for granted, especially in these tough economic times, and pandering isn't helping.
All right.
Jessica Anderson is with Heritage Action for America.
The Biden regime is completely out of touch and pandering to Hispanic voters instead of actually getting real about the issues that, just like you and I, everyone else in America, that we actually care about. And so I think they're tired of being treated like a voting bloc, that it's a one-size-fits-all rubber stamp for the Democratic Party. It is not.
Cultural issues are also playing a role. Supporting abortion at any stage has turned off many pro-family Hispanic Catholic voters.
You see the Democrats that are passing radical abortion laws in California and Colorado and New York that says that you can kill 7-pound babies right up to the point of birth. Your average hardworking Hispanic Catholic out there does not approve of that. Your African-American, hardworking African-Americans don't approve of that. That's a radical, extreme policy, and that's what the Democrat Party is pushing left and right.
So while this political realignment is helping the GOP on one hand, it's also reshaping the Democrat Party to a whiter, more elite party. An NBC News poll shows Democrats with a whopping 38-point lead among women with college degrees. That's up 10 points in 2010. Polls show that these more affluent Democrat voters care more about abortion, gun control, and climate change. A trend not lost on candidate Joe Biden when he chose clean energy policy over blue-collar jobs in a 2020 debate.
As president, would you be willing to sacrifice some of that growth, even knowing potentially that it could displace thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of blue-collar workers in the interest of transitioning to that greener economy?
The answer is yes.
Democratic strategists believe pursuing the Green New Deal and more progressive priorities will help the party with college-educated voters in key suburban battlegrounds. In this election cycle, however, where the economy is the most pressing issue, this political realignment could lead to a midterm derailment. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the middle class is rising up and pushing back.
I think those people have all now concluded that a little bit of noise and a little bit of tumult is probably worth it in exchange for a simpler, better life, a life where you can afford the things you want to do for your family, where you don't have the progressive left attacking you at every moment. I think they can see that. So I think they're going to begin to vote for the party that's going to deliver a better life for their families.
We get the realigned answers in just a few short weeks. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, random acts of kindness in the Atlanta airport. When we come back, how these workers got the biggest tip of their lives. Welcome back. Imagine showing up to your job, cleaning up the food court at the Atlanta airport, and having a stranger approach you and tell you he wants to bless you by giving you $4,000, no strings attached. That was the reality last week for Atlanta airport employees Phyllis, Brandon, and Josh, who were shocked when author and speaker Carlos Whitaker came up to them and told him he was about to give them the biggest tip of their lives.
And I want to let you know that you and Phyllis, I'm giving you $4,000 each. Because the smile on your face and the way you serve is mind-blowing. So thank you so much. You deserve it. Yeah? Let's go. Let's go. I'm in Atlanta, as you can see.
Whitaker raised the money by asking his 250,000 Instagram followers to donate to the virtual tip jar. And 24 hours later, he'd raised $105,000 total, allowing him to give all three of them $35,000 each.
This is pretty amazing. So joining us now for more on this incredible act of kindness is Carlos Whitaker. Thank you so much for coming on Faith Nation. First of all, I have a very, very big soft spot for the Atlanta airport, so I'm happy to see you going around helping those fine folks. I guess my first question is, how did you choose these three people?
You know, I'm in the Atlanta airport once or twice a week, traveling around, and I just stopped and thought to myself, you know what? These people are working so hard. There was only three of them working in the food court. They were cleaning up everyone's food, and nobody was paying attention to them. They picked up their food, and then the people would just kind of keep talking to each other. And I thought, they need to be seen. And so I just wanted to see them. I didn't know if it was going to be $100 each, $1,000 each. Definitely didn't think it was going to be $35,000 each. But I just felt Holy Spirit say, these are the ones, go bless them.
Oh, I love that so much. And as you shared the gift that you were going to be giving them, what was their response? How life-changing is this money going to be for these three people?
You know, to be honest with you, completely life-changing. What we actually raised for them each is 1.5 years of their salary, which there's a couple problems there. Nobody needs to be getting paid that little money, first of all. But I'm just grateful that we're able to give them 1.5 years of salary. And now even I'm going to be able to move out of Section 8 housing and buy my own home because I've been trying to get out of the cycle of poverty, and we've been able to help her with that.
Truly, truly life-changing. I mean, I know they can't believe it when you're giving them this money. So when they say, why me? Why me? Why are you doing this for me? What do you say to them?
You know, and that's such a good question. When I look at them and they're like, why me? I said, listen, honestly, you are chosen, you are loved, you are important, and you are seen. And, you know, as I travel around, that's all I want to help people do is to help see people. I've got a book coming out in January called How to Human. And I take the humanity of Jesus and I just unpack it. And I feel like these are three things that be human, see humans, and free humans. And that's all we need to be doing on a daily basis to truly, I think, get us back to where we're supposed to be. It's changed their lives. But then what happens is Phyllis, Brandon, and Josh, they all said to me, well, I want to do this for somebody else. How can I do this for somebody else? And I think that's the ticket, because when you do this for somebody, it pays forward.
Yeah. Well, we have about 30 seconds left, but I just want to ask you, this was not your first time doing this. I doubt it will be your last. So how can our viewers be a part of the next big blessing you do?
Absolutely. Come join. I call them the Insta Familia. And it's my Instagram followers. If you follow me on @LowSwhit, LOSWHIT, every few weeks or so, we find somebody to bless. And in the middle, you bless other people by just simply saying their name and telling them that they're worth it and that they're loved. Come join the party.
All right.
Hey, Carlos, I don't know if you know this. I work at the Atlanta airport, too. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for joining us. Great job.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys. God bless you.
All right, well, today is a national holiday. How the White House is honoring two groups issuing dual proclamations. Next. Finally, tonight, the White House is issuing dual proclamations honoring both Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. President Biden's proclamation honors America's first inhabitants and the tribal nations that still thrive today.
The White House is also honoring Christopher Columbus. To some, the Italian explorer who set sail from Spain before landing in the Americas on October 12, 1492, embodies the sins of slavery and the exploitation of Native Americans. The first Columbus Day celebration was in 1892, at a time when Italians faced religious and ethnic discrimination, and a year after the mass lynching of 11 Italian Americans. The celebration of Italian heritage has remained a national holiday since 1934.
And I believe now it's up to the city and states that change whether you celebrate Columbus Day or you celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight on Faith Nation.
We'll see you back here tomorrow.